Here's a stat that'll make your head spin. The average company is juggling over 60 cybersecurity tools right now. 60. That's more apps than most of us have on our phones. How many you got on your phone? I don't know if I got 60.
I probably don't have
You think you got 60, Troy? So we must be really safe, right? Because we have a lot of tools.
Maybe.
Stick around. This episode, we're diving into the chaos of cybersecurity tool sprawl.
That's right. This episode, we're talking about all the tools that you have that you either use, barely use, or wish you had.
All right. This is the DTF Cyber Podcast. I'm Damian.
This is Troy.
And it's the one and only Fern. Let's go. $60 apps. That's a lot. I only use 2 apps on my phone consistently. YouTube, because I click play on all of our videos and I just let them play. And I just keep going back and watch them over and over and over again. I got to get those views up. Or LinkedIn. I enjoy some LinkedIn.
No, really. Like, I don't know. I got a few apps, but I don't think I have even 60 apps. Most of them are, they get offloaded. I think it's kind of cool is my phone will offload apps I don't use.
Oh, like it's like, this one's stale. You haven't used it in like 6 months.
Yeah, and then when you go back to use it, you're like, oh, crap, it's got to download. You got to wait there.
I know what you're talking about because I've had that happen. Is that an Apple thing?
I think so.
Okay. I've had that happen where it's like, I'm pretty sure I've had this, but I don't have it anymore. So let's go into my Siri suggestions on my phone. Email, LinkedIn, my queue, because when I leave my house, the garage door, like I said, if my phone's dead, I can't open my garage door. Messages, WhatsApp, and notes. That's my top 8. Like if this was MySpace, this is my top 8 right there.
Well, if you think about that, enterprise tools though, if you think 60 at a Fortune 500 and even a small company, anywhere from 20 to 40, what's the average price of a cyber tool? $100,000, $500,000. Times 60, that's a huge investment in cybersecurity technology. I think we're really overrun by software and hardware in our industry, and CISOs are trying to figure out what they need and what they can get rid of.
I think the more interesting stat would be how much do you spend per employee? Because it's hard to say, if you're spending $100,000 or $200,000 or $1 million, what does it cost per employee? Because I know when you do like IT costs, you would have a technology cost per employee, how much a laptop costs, how much email.
Yeah.
So from a security standpoint, is it as much as we spend in IT, or is it a fraction?
Yeah, Gartner put out a statistic years back that said your cybersecurity budget should be around 7% of your overall IT spend for the business. And 7% is, depending on the size of the IT budget and the team, can be more or less than what CISOs spend. But it's a good benchmark, right? How much of that is set up of tools, though? And, you have people cost, you have technology, you have other hard costs that you have to share without the business. So I just wonder how much we're actually spending on the things that matter to move the needle to stop breaches. Isn't that what we're here?
Oh, Fern's making a face.
Yes.
You don't think 7% is enough?
7% just sounds like tax. If you ask me, it's like, how is, so maybe I misheard Troy. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. He said 7% or the Gartner's report says that cyber should get, or roughly does get, 7% of the total IT spend.
That's right. That's something that I use for years is forecasting for my department. It seems to come out correctly when you look at the fact that IT usually takes on the big spend like Microsoft and Amazon and some of the bigger platform costs.
Right. All the tools
that are IT related. 7% of that goes into cyber specific tooling, teams, and processes.
Yeah, because remember all the SaaS applications, all the services to run the organization, that's all for IT. So I think 7% is actually pretty good, Troy, because I've used the 5% number and tried to fight for a 5% number. So if you're getting 7, you're ahead.
Yeah, that's to me, I don't know if it's an interesting number because when I think of all the people that focus on cybersecurity sales, right? Like the resellers or like people that, lead with cybersecurity, you're only, if realistically it's actually 7%, you're kind of limiting your market to 7% of a pie that is 100%, right? So if someone spends $100 million, you can only expect to see maybe 7 million in security, right? So if you're focusing on security, like you have a very, very distilled like capability to sell or expected value from a customer. To me, that seems a little backwards, but it also seems a little bit low because like if you ever go to the store and buy something that's nice, they always offer you the warranty. Like, would you like to get the warranty? And that warranty, refrigerators, washing machines, car warranties, they're nowhere near 7% of what it costs for the actual, we'll say, asset that you buy. So what's interesting to me is like people are more than happy to spend 10, 15, 20% on a warranty to protect their investment on the tool or the other what
That's
they
just
buy.
insurance, though.
Well, isn't that what security is part of?
No, I mean, insurance is part of it. But if you think about it, you take that appliance home, now you got to lock your doors, maybe have an alarm for your house to make sure nobody steals it. So there's more involved there. It's not just an insurance.
But
yeah, I think that a lot of people try to say cybersecurity is like an insurance policy. You know, you're insuring yourself against the future. Number one, there's no cybersecurity silver bullet. So there's nothing that's going to stop all attacks. And secondarily, this is risk mitigation. Honestly, this is how much risk can the business tolerate if your data gets out there into the public. You know, it has nothing to do with the IT budget. It has to do with the reputation of the company, operational outages, litigation risk, and so on. So this goes way outside of, you know, traditional insurance and warranty. And sometimes as cybersecurity leaders, we have to make that differentiation. People assume that cybersecurity insurance is like insurance, but it's not.
okay. So we won't call it insurance. And maybe that was a bad analogy, right? But in my mind, I think like, well, I'm spending all this money and I'm spending just a little bit more to make sure if anything happens, I'm in the clear, right? But like you said, Trey, it's risk mitigation. But tell me if I'm wrong, 7%, if it's industry standard, seems kind of low from my opinion, right? I'm obviously not a CISO, but like to me, it seems like 7% is just like pocket change. Or like I said, it just feels like tax. It's like you go to the restaurant, you know you're going to spend $100. Like, all right, make it 108 because that's tax on there. Like it just, why does cybersecurity feel like it's just tax?
No, I mean, it's you. Look, I don't know if we're going to have a correct answer for you. I know it seems kind of small, but you kind of have to look at the overall spend for all of IT. So you sold a lot of IT equipment, infrastructure, right? Isn't that infrastructure really expensive?
It is, but they only do it every few years. Like they usually have a large capital project. So if someone's going to spend a bunch of money, they're spending it and then they're sweating their gear for 5, 6, 7, 10 years, right? There's some companies that I work with that would have gear from, you know, early 2000s and they're still depreciating it. I don't know how they do it. Like,
yeah, but there's more to it than that. There's also the circuits. There's also, you know, whatever other services you have to make sure the business runs. So anyways, I think to your point, Damian, you know, CISOs are fighting for that 5 to 7%, honestly. Yeah. You know, the larger you get with the larger IT budgets, that 5 to 7% is harder and harder to get. So 7% is a benchmark that I don't think a lot of people are hitting. Yeah. But also, if you think about what Fern said earlier, it does point a light to this endemic problem of cybersecurity, which is there are thousands of salespeople out there trying to push their specific widget or service into a pool of CISOs that have a fraction of a massive pie. So we have less money than vendors think we do. And we're trying to solve strategic risk problems with a flood of new software and hardware every day. So that is a real challenge for CISOs to kind of discern what is good, what is necessary, what will fill the gaps that they need to secure the business.
So I saw something the other day. You guys both know Larry Whiteside, right?
Oh, yeah.
He posted something on LinkedIn where it's a bunch of people running at a door. And it's like he basically says like, this is what it's like to be a CISO. Everyone wants your attention. Everyone wants your time. And they're trying to sell you something because it's AI powered and they can, and I think the overall idea was it's not that they don't want to let people in. They just want to let the right people in that can help them versus, I think he says, separate signal from noise, right? And that's basically exactly what just Troy said, is that there's so many people trying to sell whatever they have, whatever point solution they have. But there's also, for every one person, there's probably at least 10 or 15 people selling something, or we'll say 5 to 7 people selling the exact same thing with a different logo behind it, or 15 to 20 that are selling something completely different. And then each of those people have another 5 to 7 per. So it's like what do they say? Cyber can be broken up into 14 disciplines, right? 14 different categories of cybersecurity. So you figure there's at least a handful of people in every category trying to get to the CISO.
Yeah, so I wonder, back to our original problem that we started the show off with, right? The tool sprawl. And part of the problem is, as security leaders, we pull in products as we see a gap, right? You don't have necessarily get to plan these things out. And if you do, you could maybe become more efficient. But the problem is, if you feel like your budget's kind of small, I've got this gap, let me plug it. The next thing, you find another gap, you go buy another tool. And so that's where this average of 60 cybersecurity tools come into play, is because of the fill the gap mentality and not being able to feel like I can plan for this over the next 3 to 4 years, because your budget doesn't necessarily grow or doesn't necessarily fit some of those initiatives.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think another thing to point out here is you're wearing two hats as a CISO, wearing a lot of hats, but two specifically. One is a long-term strategic thinker, where you're coming up with a roadmap and what you want to see your program look like in 3 to 5 years. And on the other side, you're a firefighter with that hat on. You're actually fighting incidents and things in your environment that you did not expect. And that's where you're going to have to outlay capital to fill those gaps in an emergency. So the same dollars that you have to shuffle around on this chessboard, you have to figure out how to fill those short-term gaps that you identify on the fly as they happen, and the long-term strategic goals of the business to secure data, people, identities, network, and applications.
Well, here's a problem, Troy. You just said long-term, put that long-term goal hat on, 3 to 5 years. But Fern, do you know the average lifespan of a CISO?
Funny enough you ask, because I just read an article that said it's less than 3 years.
Yes.
Typically.
Yeah. It used to be 18 months. I don't even know if it's that short anymore.
Yeah, it's between 18 and 36 months, right? Which is no time to get a strategic plan in place. And hopefully you're going to leave behind good people that can carry out your wishes or wills for the business. Hopefully you've made an impact. But normally CISOs burn out, or they get turned over because of an incident or something like that. But we do have a short lifespan. To your point, you're going to create a plan somebody else is going to execute.
Yeah, let's be clear there. Lifespan, as in job lifespan.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we should do a study, right? The amount of stress that you deal with through your career.
I'll tell you one thing. I've met a lot more Silver Fox CIOs than I have CISOs. Right. When it comes to old age, there's definitely more in the CIO.
I was scared to ask now. What do you consider old? Be careful, because you got Troy and I on this.
Yeah. No, I think realistically, old is probably like 65 plus. Like, that's like if you should have retired, or like not you should have, but like if the government's saying like, hey, you qualify to be retired, like I think like maybe you shouldn't be in tech anymore.
But some people like their jobs.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to like bucket people. So I don't know, but I would say like if you're past the age of retirement, I think maybe you should just retire. Make some room for the fresh blood. The 55-year-olds to come in. But what I do find interesting though is that there's a lot of people that I know now. When I first started like selling a long time ago, I was like the young guy. I was like 24. Now I'm almost 40, but I was like 24 at the time, and I remember thinking like, man, there's no way in hell any CIO, CTO, CISO is ever going to want to talk to me, which is probably true. I wasn't wrong in that assumption, right? But now that I'm older, it's like the people that I know are celebrating like their 40th birthday, and they happen to be a CISO. Multiple people, right? It's like I'm the same age as a lot of people that are in these roles that when I first started, I thought, man, there's no way they're going to talk to me. They probably still don't want to talk to me.
They still don't want to talk to you.
They only show up for the podcast, but it is an interesting dynamic now, because now that I'm older, a lot of people that I know, like I said, are in those positions where in the past, I was like, oh, they won't pick up a phone call, for me at least. But I did get thinking about what Troy said or what you said is like fill in the gaps, right? So tell me if I'm wrong here. And maybe this is the whole idea of what the point of the episode is if you have a bucket, right? And you fill it with water, but it has holes, obviously it's leaking, right? the solution isn't to add more water to keep the water level where it's at. It's to just fill the holes, right? Plug the holes. But wouldn't a better option be just to get a new bucket, right?
Yeah, I think that I've seen this analogy. It's not the bucket, it's the dam, right?
Okay.
So you got this dam, it's got holes in it, you keep patching it because you can't let, the people down river flood. And so part of the problem is if you think about how much it costs to build a new dam, to redivert that water and how long that takes, maybe 10 years, 15 years. I don't know. Even in government, right? If we're trying to plan for these infrastructure planning, it takes a long time. And a lot of times they never get completed.
But, okay. But doesn't a lot of stuff start like, okay.
I know that's different, right? That's like 10, 15 years. But the reason why I said that is because we just established that, hey, if I want to do some planning over the next 3 to 5 years, that's in technology. That's a long time. By the time you get to the 3-year mark, technology's changed.
But couldn't people make a case that if they go with one of the large vendors, right, like the large firewall companies or just the large like platforms, that those companies, which notably have done a lot of acquisitions over the years to bring in capabilities.
Yeah. This is a common debate. It's best of breed versus platform.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts on it, obviously.
What's your biggest hot take on best of breed versus platform?
Well, I think the answer, and I'll skip to the end because you talk about platform, just pick one platform, do everything that they have versus have a bunch of best of breed. The actual solution is that you have somewhere in between. You're not going to have a single platform. You may have 5 or 6 main players that can integrate, and they would be best of breed. So you think best of breed platforms for different areas, because we just talked about the 14 domains in cybersecurity, and there's different components that you have to take care of. And so you may want to pick, for example, the best identity provider. You may want to pick the best endpoint provider. You may want to pick the best network security, and then cloud security. So you got to break it down into like maybe 5 or 6 that have their own ecosystem, and then make sure they play well together. So I think best of breed platforms versus one platform that can do everything.
Yeah, and I think that best in breed, is a luxury that a lot of people can't afford to have. Sometimes you have to take the products and services from your platform provider because it's kind of all-inclusive, or in some cases free along with your platform. But sometimes you'll find that those additional add-ons cost just as much as they do if you buy them outside, and you're not really saving money. But at the same time, you have to, as a security leader, understand the implication of using, let's just say, a half-baked product in your environment, and it could allow hackers to get in. Because when these big platforms buy these smaller startups and try to integrate them, there's a lot of challenges in that integration of the tools, and sometimes there's arbitrage of areas where hackers can take advantage of that, and we've seen it. So you got to be very careful when a platform tries to kludge together all these solutions into a seamless place. I agree with Damian. You want to be with your platform partners that you can rely on for the future. And what I tell mine is that when it gets there, when my engineers believe in it and want to deploy it, then we'll adopt that new feature that you've acquired. But not until then. I want to make sure that it's going to keep the company secure. Last thing I want to do is have a false sense of security that we've invested in a tool or a product or something that's going to stop bad guys that, in fact, won't.
So what about like when vendors have I see this a lot on LinkedIn. It's like, oh, new release as of today, we're offering this product, this feature, boom, 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 boom. It's like, all right, man, like that sounds cool, but that doesn't fix this problem over here, right? It's like,
well, not for you.
Well, not for me.
Yeah, but there might be another customer that's looking for that.
Yeah, but like, do you guys, as like people in security, like practitioners, do you actually really care about the latest and greatest stuff that just got released? Or would you rather wait a few revisions until you start looking at it?
It depends. There's a lot of times I'll beta test stuff. Why not? Especially if I think it's going to be useful.
Okay. I don't know. To me, it seems like knowing some of the people that I've met, it's like they'd rather focus on other things that are more
It
important.
just it's all how much risk is involved today, and what can I do to mitigate that risk. But I want to go back to what you were saying before. Like if there's a platform, right? And Troy, we see this all the time. Everything gets bundled in there.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's for free, but free is not always free, right? There's operational costs, there's training, you maybe introduce another problem. Let me just put it this way. Do you like buffets? Oh, you're smiling.
Does the Pope wear white?
I like the buffets. All you can eat, right?
Oh yeah, especially if
And
it's
choose
a
whatever you
Vegas,
want.
Vegas buffet. What's the place called? And Caesars.
Bachanal.
Yeah. I just saw a thing that I think there's only like 6 buffets on the strip
Okay.
out of like, there used to be like 50 of them. Anyways, you go to the buffet and they're like, don't worry, we got everything covered. And you're like, well, I need transportation. And the buffet goes, no, we got you. We'll cover transportation. You're like, okay, cool. And they'll be like, it's free. Why not, right? Next thing you know, a guy on a little tricycle shows up at your door. Hop on, I'll take you to the buffet.
Buffet, let's go.
So that's like, really? And so if your company's saying, well, it's free, it's included. And a lot of times, you go through this with procurement teams. They're like, I don't see the difference. You got free transportation. It's the same thing. These platforms will bundle stuff in that maybe they just went and bought some used tricycle out there and said, yeah, now we can offer transportation. We're a buffet. We're a restaurant. So it's a similar concept, right? It's not all transportation is created equally. Maybe you want to be able to go buy a Ferrari to drive it to the restaurant. Is that realistic? Maybe not, right? So to the other side of that, best in breed. But maybe something that's a little bit more usable than a Ferrari and not as basic as a tricycle.
Like a Corolla.
Here's the example I use all the time. It's very practical, and I won't mention vendor names. You probably understand who I'm talking about. You get certain email and DLP protections from your email provider, and you get email, and it lets a ton of spam through. You get all kind of spam, and phishing comes through without any stoppage. And it's like no matter what you do, no matter how you tune it, you cannot make this email filtering work. But your CFO says, well, we get email filtering through this platform. Why don't we just use that? Why do you want this additional money for an email filter? It's like, because my users are getting hammered with spam, right? And so, that's where the CISO has to say, look, I'm putting my foot down. This is an area where we need better stuff that's going to stop threats in the inbox, because that's where we're getting hit. And we see that all the time. And the CFO argues back, no, we have it covered. We paid for that already. It's included with our email service. We don't want to pay additionally for that. So, as a CISO, you have to have that. And that's another reason CISOs leave, is because they have to make these kind of silly arguments all the time to prefer security over dollars. And the business is like, we don't need that. And it's like, okay, well, when that massive breach happens and you're paying millions of dollars in retainers and lawyers and breach notifications, I'll remind you of that very cheap additional email protection that we tried to get you to write the check for, but you wouldn't.
Yeah. So obviously Troy is not taking the tricycle to the buffet.
No.
No.
Troy wants to ride in style, right?
Yeah.
He wants to show up in
He just
I like
wants
the
to have
buffet analogy, but I would say it's like going to a buffet and they have everything, but you don't like the vegetables. And they're like, yeah, but we got the vegetables, but that's not the vegetables I like. They're terrible. They're going to make me upset, stomach, whatever. So,
you know what? It's like? It's like a buffet with dessert that is 100% dairy based. And you're lactose intolerant. You're like, hang on a second, man. Like, my table needs to be by the bathroom if I'm going to eat this stuff.
Anyways, I think we're over exaggerating a little bit, but that's a lot of times that's the case, right? Where certain things are bundled into a platform, but it's not necessarily usable, or it doesn't fit your environment or your needs. And so that's why I said you may want to look at, even if there's a little bit of the overlap between multiple platforms, you may still want to have multiple platforms for each area, and then just make sure they can integrate with one another.
Seems like a lot of work.
It's a lot easier to manage that way than have 60 tools, independent tools.
Yeah, for sure. And Damian, what about the flip side of this coin is you walk into, or you're a CISO of a company that's grown over time and you have 60 tools and you don't even know what the return on investment of all 60 are. How do you do tool rationalization? That means, deciding which ones to pull out, which ones you can replace, and which ones you can, now rely on your platform where you couldn't before.
Yeah. I mean, I've entered into jobs or positions, and on the day one, usually the first 30 days, just trying to figure out what is in inventory. What have they purchased? And I've walked into places where they're only using 20% of what they purchased.
So on a $100 million budget for the entire org, $7 million is spent on security. 1.4 million is actually being used on security tools. And then the other 5.6 is just being wasted.
No, remember you got people expenses in there, so you can't just say it's all tools.
Okay. Oh, so that the 7% was of head count as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You gotta pay for people. They don't work for free.
Yeah.
Headcount, travel, training,
Okay. I think
technology.
when I heard Troy say that earlier, I was thinking just like flat out purchases, not actual like, what do they call it? SG&A or whatever on like the 10Ks. I think that's what it's called, SG&A. I don't know. I'm not a financial person, but 7%. Okay. So, but it's still, so going with that, if 80% of what people are using is not necessarily being utilized, doesn't that make a strong case for consolidation?
Yeah. So here's another thing, right? Typically, you see a gap, but you forget you may have already purchased a capability in another tool.
Yeah. So
That's happened too.
So I know someone. We were at one of the cybersecurity summits, and we were talking about some tools capability, and the guy goes, the best kind of Christmas, or he said it's like Christmas to a CISO when they find out that they're looking for a tool and they realize that they already have that capability with another tool.
Yeah.
Like they're looking for like DLP, and they find out that whatever product that they have, like some other manufacturer offers like DLP baked in, but they just didn't ever deploy it. He's like, that's like Christmas to a CISO.
Yeah. It's like you put on a pair of pants that you just took out of laundry and you find $100 in the pocket because you forgot to take it out.
Yeah, that's happened. Or 20, for sure, 20, right? But that I guess that's better, right? Because then now you have the ability to use this.
Or try it at least. You don't know if it's a fit, but at least evaluate it because you already own it. But yeah, I mean, that happens a lot too. So I think one of the problems is that we don't do a good job at inventorying assets from a tool perspective. So we always talk about
inventorying capabilities, right?
Capabilities and tool assets. We say that we need to manage our assets, but we sometimes don't even know where all of our servers are or instances, all the things that we need to manage, even user IDs. I think those are standard, and a lot of security teams struggle with some of those. But then you have to move down into, well, what tools do I have? What capabilities do I have? How many people do I have to manage these tools? And so that's the tricky part of managing a cybersecurity department.
I say that'd be an interesting company where it's like you work as a consultant or in some form of like you offer some, we'll say like SaaS tool where you go into someone's environment and you scan it and you see.
There are tools.
Oh, for that specifically?
Definitely tools for that, yeah.
That tell you that give you like a heat map of the capabilities and the cross.
Yeah. Actually, there's new ones coming out now. I won't name any names, but I know some of them because they've asked for advice. You just essentially they'll look at the tools and say, here's the capabilities, and they can just map it and say, well, here's what you have from a maturity standpoint, what you have deployed and what you haven't deployed.
Oh, and then like if you were to deploy, how would it improve your posture?
They can map it back. You can map it back to different frameworks.
See, if I was 5 years earlier, I could be a multimillionaire. If we did this podcast 5 years ago, maybe we'd all be like crazy ideas. Okay. Well, what were you going to say, Troy?
Yeah, I was going to say that, I had and I mentioned this before, that I had a spreadsheet. I hate Excel spreadsheets, but in this case, I had a big spreadsheet that I tracked all the software we invested in along with the renewal dates, because that gave us leverage when it was time to renew, that we didn't run up against the, a short timeline, and then we just get stuck in another renewal. It gave us the opportunity to look at other technology in those areas. It also gave us the ability to negotiate pricing. And so that spreadsheet, I would share it with all of my plus ones, all of my direct reports out there, and let them understand what they had. But here's the thing that you may not think about, Damian, even further is there are capabilities outside of the CISO team that you have access to that you don't know you have access to. So let's say the email platform is run by the IT department, and they do all the configuration because it's very heavy engineering focused, and you don't realize that they have additional knobs they can turn for security. Or on the identity platform, that the identity team who reports to the CIO runs has security tools that might tell you when somebody's scanning the Active Directory, might have a little protection for those type of scans. So there's a lot of capabilities that you need to inventory that are outside your own department that you might have access to that you've already purchased, or otherwise the CISO might go buy redundant technology to cover that gap and find out much later the CIO had access to a tool the whole time.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it goes the other way too. Security might have visibility that the IT team didn't know was there.
Yeah, I've lived in that situation a handful of times where, and this is probably like the biggest opportunity for people to kind of fix this sort of mistake, is networking and security seem to be like yin and yang in the worst way possible. It's like, or not yin and yang, like oil and water. They just, in my experience, a lot of times networking people just don't get along with security. And I don't know the dynamic. I've never been.
Oh, it's pretty simple, right? The IT team and the network team wants to keep the network up and running with low latency, and they don't want to get called for outages. Somebody can't get access to something, and then they feel like the security people are putting blockers in place to stop the users from doing that. That creates
issues for them to have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if that's the main thing, then I guess that makes sense. But in this case specifically, what happened was that it was a client. They were working on some AWS stuff, right? And the infrastructure team was working on part of that because everyone's working together, kind of, right? In parentheses, air quotes, working together. But infrastructure team bought a tool from a manufacturer that offered a capability, right? So they bought that like 2 months in advance because they were just getting ahead of things. And the guy that ran infrastructure team was always on the ball. He was ahead of the curve and always made sure that everything that he needed was ready. And then we go in there and we're doing consulting work, and we talk about how they can actually configure their environment natively with the AWS to get, or no, it was Microsoft actually, how they could set this up, this capability in the tool, like through whatever tools that Microsoft offers. And the first question was like, hang on a second, like, why do we buy that over there? And it's like, I don't know. Why did we buy that? It was to do this. Like, yeah, but you can do that with this for free. And it was like, if it had these two different teams actually spoken, they would have known that one person had bought something because they needed it, but they weren't necessarily part of that conversation with the other team to say, oh, we can do this without having to even buy anything. So perfect example. And I think this was like $20,000. It wasn't that much.
No, it happens all the time. So the other point I want to make too is like sometimes that platform that is including a lot of services, because you mentioned something earlier where you don't know if they go and acquire. They don't always go and acquire technologies. They don't always go acquire companies. Sometimes they build their own, right? Mm-hmm. But the problem with that acquisition model, especially if you do a lot of them, is that they're still separate products. And sometimes they still have different management interfaces. And so even if you have a platform from one vendor, you might be looking at like 5, 6, 10, 12 different management screens that you have to go to, set things up. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's easier to use because it's all from one vendor.
Yeah. There's a phrase, it's the single pane of glass, right? Or it's the single glass of pain. I haven't seen that personally, but I can imagine, like you said, like as you go deeper into a tool, it brings up a new interface, and it's just like, this is a specialized
Oh no, it happens all the time.
Okay.
I won't name any names, but there's some big platforms that have multiple management screens, completely different logins too.
For the same for the same vendor.
Same vendor, but they have different capabilities. But it's essentially, a technology they may have acquired and they just hadn't integrated it ever.
Yeah. That's wild. But then, so what happens with the employees as they specialize in these tools? Because that becomes another dynamic when it comes to saying, hey, we're looking to consolidate our vendors. You have people that are like, I built my entire career on this virtualization software. Like, I don't know if I can move to this other stuff, right? And then you have people fighting because it's like, well, if I'm specialized in virtualization, which a lot of people are, and it's like literally entire career building on a certain platform. And then you're like, yeah, we're just gonna move to this other one. We like the color red. We like red a little bit better than this one. So now we're moving over here, and people are like, oh man, like no,
that's with anything in technology though. It's gonna change. You have to just stay up to date.
But Fern, you touched on something that's so true. I mean, I remember when we moved from VMware to Amazon Cloud, I'm talking about 2012 timeframe, you had engineers that were just scratching and clawing, resisting that move because they're like, I spent my whole career learning VMware and getting certified in it. And now we're just going to throw that out the window and go to this thing called the cloud. That seems like a forever ago, but it was, a tough time. Same thing with the SIM. I won't name any names, but there are entire, departments who have built their career on getting certified in specific SIM technology. And now we're going to more, AI SOC powered, SIMless security lakes. And it's just throwing all these people into an uproar. And to that, we say, like our last episode on the careers, be flexible and lean into new technology. Don't be that person that holds out because you're going to end up losing your job. Those engineers who are the roadblocks and who put their feet in the sand and try to stop, us moving forward are going to be the first ones to go out the door when we have to have a RIF or some other, reduction in force type of action.
Yeah. Don't be Greg shouting. Or no, what was the guy with the stapler? I can't think of his name.
Milton?
No. Milton, yeah. My stapler. It's like, go.
I think I have actually had the opposite happen to me where when I started my career, they wanted me to manage mainframe.
Like AS400?
Yeah.
Really?
And I'm like, I don't really want to do this. I'll learn it, but it's kind of right? This is not the future.
That's dinosaurs. Yeah.
Those dinosaurs, this was like over 25 years ago. So yeah, that would have been, could you imagine if I just said, oh yeah, I'm going to be a mainframe specialist?
You'd be worth a lot of money right now.
You have a job forever in this town because it's all over Las Vegas for sure.
Yeah. But how exciting would that be? I mean, I guess it's fine if that's what you want. You're like, I'm going to be job secure and I'm good. Mm-hmm. But so I did the opposite where I said, I'm going to move because I need to keep growing and keep learning. And for me, that was the best move. So it was the opposite where the employees telling the company that. But yeah, you have to stay up to date. Like Troy said, now, we're facing AI, and what do we do with some of these agentic AI agents, and how do you program them? Are they taking over your jobs? In a way, yes, but that's not the end, right? The next move is to take that the next step and say, okay, what can I do to leverage these to make my job better, make me more advanced?
Yeah. How can I get paid the same amount to work 5 times less? Right? Because I'm sure people think that.
Or do 5 times more with the same person if you're management, right?
Oh yeah. There's 2 sides to the coin. It's like,
you want to do five times less. I want you to do the same amount of work but get 5 times the amount of productivity.
Yeah, definitely 2 sides of that, right? But I think there are times I'd call people like, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm at the gym. Like, what do you mean you're at the gym? It's like 2:00. Like, yeah, I'm at the gym. Okay. Hey, can you do this for me?
Definitely not a CISO.
No. SEs, right? It's like, hey,
you're bagging on SEs now. Poor SEs.
No, not all of them. There was a couple that I ran into. It's like, but they always got their stuff done. So, but to me, it was always frustrating because it's like, I'm sitting here at my desk. I'm here, all morning, all night. I go home and I work, and it's like, I call someone to get something, and it's like, they're just, it felt like they were hanging out. Granted, I know they weren't hanging out, but just seemed like that. That's how it, perception, right? So no, not SEs aren't bad. It's just, it always felt like they had a lot more free time, but they do a lot of heavy lifting, right? So you can't knock them, because without the SE, salespeople wouldn't be successful. We'll just say that, right? Personal opinion.
Yeah, I think that the unsung heroes of any, vendor is the sales engineers, period. These are the guys who can walk in a room with gravitas and talk about the solution and how it's actually going to solve the problems for the CISO in a technical way that makes sense. The sales guy gets to take the CISO out to dinner and play golf and wine and dine them, but the SE is the one who makes that sale. So again, unsung heroes of the sales team for sure.
Yeah. So no under the bus throwing. Just, it's sometimes it feels like there's winners and there's losers, and sometimes it just feels like you're losing, right? But I guess back to the whole idea of like platforms and consolidation, it's so very much so like what you had said with infrastructure, like with Troy when he was saying 2012, I think was the year you said they were looking at moving to from
AWS
on-prem to AWS. But now most people have a hybrid environment. A lot of times they have certain things on premise at a data center, colo, whatever they have. And then they have a good amount somewhere else, right? Where they can scale it as they need. Maybe they have some sort of like burst agreement where certain times of the year they can leverage more of the infrastructure that they kind of essentially rent, right? But keep very mission critical things on site. And maybe they even have 2 locations where they do that. So I don't know of any customer or any organization that's 100% cloud, really, or that's 100% on-prem. I would think most people are kind of somewhere in the middle. And so you're saying security is very much the same. It's not necessarily platform or best of breed. It's a handful of platform players with a few best of breeds.
Well, no, the best of breed platforms, really, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, so best of breed platforms with best of breed point solutions.
Yeah,
is maybe a better way to phrase that.
Well, they're in
for sure.
part of the platform.
And I think that every business is different, right? So that need may be much different for somebody in one industry than another, where you have more on-premise or more in the cloud or more of a hybrid. But I think that CISOs have to walk in and look at risk and do the mapping for what's important to the business. And remember, we're just risk informers to the business. This is where you stand to lose the most, or where you have the biggest risk of a data loss, an operational outage, a legal risk. We shape our program around known frameworks, but at the end of the day, it's all about shoring up those defenses based on how the company makes money, and every company's different. So we talk black and white on this podcast pretty much. This is what you got to do, but every single company, you got to do it differently with different nuance and different stakeholders and different points of view. And so it's tough. You got to be a relationship builder first. You got to be a people person first. And then you have to be an intellectual and know the risk frameworks. And then you have to be, budget friendly and financially fiduciary responsible for your unit. So it is a very interesting job that's going to, be around forever. So, keep following this path, but it's also going to keep you on your toes.
Yeah. And that relationship building is also out of your department. Like Troy, like you said earlier, right? Sometimes you have capabilities you can tap outside of security, and that becomes extremely useful.
Yeah. That's also a big topic that I've seen too, is like, a lot of times, I can't think of percentages, but it was a CISO article that I read talking about burnout and how a lot of times security people or people that work in security don't have the leverage outside of security to get things done.
I think I think it depends on the company and the company culture, but I think a lot of it has to do with networking with your peers outside of your department. You absolutely have to do that. Because it's not always the way security wants to see it. Sometimes you have to make adjustments to make sure that you're enabling the business. And so if you're looking at these platforms and these tools, look at tools that are going to help enable the business, right? Not stop the business from doing what they need to do. Because if you say, no, I can't do, you're not supposed to do that, then people are just going to do it anyways. And you end up with shadow IT, shadow AI, and other things that you just can't control because you can't see it. But one of the things I was talking about is having the integrations between these security platforms, because you want to them to be able to share information, so you can be adaptable from different types of attacks, or be able to see something on one tool and then be able to validate it on another, or just go across platforms to, limit risk. The way I kind of look at this is, any video game, you always get the boss at the end stage, and every boss has a weakness. Well, imagine if that boss could morph. And sometimes some video games do this. The boss would morph. So if you're using like one type of attack and you're like, oh, this is working, and then it morphs into something different, you're like, okay, that doesn't work anymore. You got to try something different. Well, think of that from a security standpoint. If I get an attack, how can I morph my security, the whole security posture to be able to defend against that particular attack? Well, first you've got to be able to see it and sense it, but then you also need the other tools to kind of adjust to center its defense in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Like Mike Tyson's Punch Out, just get that uppercut just right.
Yeah, I was saying, it sounds like you've been playing Resident Evil. Resident Evil has some serious end bosses back in the day. Like, gave me nightmares as a kid. I was also like 10 years old playing a shooting game, so probably wasn't the best for me. But I know what you're saying, because it's like, what's another good example where I've seen something like this is like sports, right? Even with sports, like if someone consistently just hits 3-pointers, which NBA mostly is now, is just a 3-point game. But if someone has a high, we'll say maybe fidelity is not the right word, but like a high accuracy,
yeah,
like they'll start putting more people on that person. So they'll double cover that person, and they'll let the person that's the weaker shooter just, miss, right? So they're adapting to the fact that the strong shooter is now getting double coverage, let someone else miss, because there's a higher chance that if the good shooter has the ball, they're going to score, whereas the other person, they don't. It doesn't matter, right? So it's like the risk of losing the game because of a high percentage shooter is worth taking someone off, right? So in a lot of ways, this risk mitigation, where put double coverage over here because that person is...
Yeah, but you realize what's going on there, right? There's 5 players on the floor. This is like, think about it, 5 different security tools. If they can all talk and adapt, your chances of winning that game is better, because there's communication happening. There's that integration happening. And I think the same concept has to happen with our security tools.
Is have it where even their best of breed platforms can integrate with one another.
Can at least share information.
Yeah, and I've noticed that too. There's a lot of platforms out there now that say, "Hey, we're proud to announce our integration with this provider," right? Proud to announce that we can integrate with this, right?
I think that's more important than having tools from the same vendor.
Is the ability to communicate.
So one of the things that we had started with was, okay, we're trying to plug that dam, and we end up with all these tools that are just filling a gap. And we had established, well, you need a 3 to 5 year plan, and you most likely aren't going to be there in 3 to 5 years.
You could be like the Louvre and be 20 years out.
20 years out for basic stuff. I don't know, right? You still have to do it. You still have to plan, I think, strategically. And I think this is where a lot of CISOs, forget about, is that strategically you have to think about where the future should be. And you may not get there while you're still there, or you may not get there even if you're there 5 years. But you still have to have that plan. So will it take you 30 years or 20 years like the Louvre? I don't know. But you still need to at least have a plan of what a perfect end state would look like.
And it's a journey, right? Because technology changes every 18 months or something, a new, technology out there. So you can't even predict what your roadmap is going to look like in 18 months to 36 months based on the rate of change in the industry. So it's kind of like being a, soothsayer in some ways.
A what? What
Fortune teller.
Oh, okay.
Nostradamus, a soothsayer.
I'm learning new words today. I've literally never heard that word. And anyone listening is like, poor guy. For me.
There we go. No.
Okay. No, I like that.
Maybe it's just an old fashioned term, but yeah, that's, you got to be able to predict where the industry is going as well. So sometimes when you're trying to, get your roadmap approved and the budget approved, you have to convince people that, hey, this is where we're all going. I know it doesn't look like that yet, but jump on the bus. I'm driving. Let's go.
So question before we head out, because I got to run here soon. Was AI on the roadmap 5 years ago for most organizations?
No.
I think AI was on the map, not generative AI, not large language models, not what we see today as agentic AI. That was not on the radar. But I think AI has been around since, Stu McClure and Cylance days. So we've heard AI in every tool, machine learning AI.
You're right, Troy.
But
in the tools.
But not like what we see today.
Yeah. So over a decade ago, we had them in the tools, but not, Gen AI, agentic AI agents, that's all new. We never planned for that.
Well, that was my point, is because you said you have to have a plan. But even if you have a plan,
but then you adjust it, right?
Yeah,
then you
yeah.
realize, this is changing, so
right.
I need to adjust my end plan here. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but hopefully I have phases to get there. But you still need to have that. Hey, this is where I'm going.
Yeah. And I think my point was like, when you say that, as long as you have this plan, you're good. But it's fluid.
evolving.
It's like water, right? You get like Bruce Lee, be the water, right?
Yeah, it's evolving. You have to.
Because even Gartner didn't predict some of the things that are out today 5 years ago, right? So I like that. So always have a plan. And even if you have a plan and you don't get to where you want to be in your 5-year plan or 5-year journey, as long as you're making updates and like adjustments to what's new and where you can go, I think you're in a good spot. And by doing that, you're able to stay current, right? Use the latest tools, but then also kind of bring in more tools, as long as you're standardized on a few best of breed platforms that, one, communicate amongst one another, and give you the ability to integrate with other tools, but then also add in point solutions as you go, because not every platform covers every hole, right? Every gap. So,
I would say this. So if you're a CISO, talk to the analysts, do those skip levels, talk to the analysts, try to find out what their day-to-day looks like. Because if you see inefficiencies that they got to hop between different screens, or if you see things that they can maybe automate or, have some integration with tools to work through APIs, that would be the time to see it. And then if you are an analyst, you need to really communicate with your leadership some of the challenges you have in your day-to-day, right? Don't just say, this is my job and I just do this day in, day out. I think if you see, opportunity to improve the process, improve through automation or through more integrations, bring that up. Go for it, right? So I think that communication, even within the security department, has to happen. And Troy, you made a really good point. If you're a security leader, you got to reach out to other organizations within your company to see if there's maybe collaboration that can happen with IT or with the developers if you're part of a product company.
Yep. And I would just end with cybersecurity is a journey, not a destination. So, that plan is always going to evolve, be flexible, and be amenable to change. Because if you're rigid and hard and steadfast, you're going to have a hard time in this industry.
Chase that rainbow.
Find a leprechaun, right? But the only thing maybe I would add to what you said, Damian, is I know people whose sole job in large enterprise organizations is to find problems and fix them. Like their entire job is to find, and it's across entire IT. So security, networking, infrastructure, everything, right? Their role is specifically go out there and find inefficiencies in the business and recommend how we fix that. And then that's what they do. So they're more or less architects, but they're architects for the business where they kind of tie in different business units throughout the enterprise. And that's their full-time job, right? So like you said, an analyst can do it, right? But the best part of that is I think a lot of times people are stuck in their own bubble, right? And all it takes is just a phone call, right? To talk to someone else and say, hey, this is what we're dealing with, like you said. And then that could, realistically, it could save the company millions of dollars. So I like that. That's a nugget for sure. Not much more to add, but I just figured I'd add that in there before we go. And I guess with that, we'll see you guys next week.